Do not be deceived by the pleasant masks of progress, for every age claims to be more tolerant than the one before it, more civilized, more advanced. But I ask you, what is the cost of this so-called advancement if it comes at the expense of truth, of intellect, of the sacred right to speak and to think? In my time, I witnessed the chains of tyranny forged by czars and bureaucrats, by prison walls and political decrees. I knew what it was to be silenced. I stood before the firing squad. I watched men reduced to numbers, to mere mechanisms under the weight of ideological machinery. But even then, I feared less for the body than I did for the soul. The soul, after all, can be imprisoned far more subtly, by shame, by fear, by the enforced silence of the thinking mind. And now, as I gaze beyond the veil of death upon your world, what do I see? I see a society intoxicated with the virtue of tolerance, yet unable to tolerate thought itself. A culture where offense is a currency, outrage a weapon, and silence demanded of those who would speak inconvenient truths. Understand me well. Tolerance in its true form is a virtue of the highest order. It is the foundation of compassion, the hallmark of an enlightened society. But like all virtues, when torn from its proper place and made absolute, it becomes a parody of itself, a poison masquerading as medicine. What is the point of tolerance that refuses to endure questions? What is the merit in a freedom that fears challenge, that recoils when confronted with the sharp edge of thought? You elevate the feelings of the easily offended above the responsibilities of the thinking man. In so doing, you begin to censor, not with laws, but with shame. You do not burn books, but you burn reputations. You do not imprison dissidents, but you exile them from discourse. Label them heretics of your new morality. What happens then when those with the courage to think independently begin to hold their tongues? When philosophers and poets, scientists and skeptics all learn that silence is safer than sincerity? I will tell you what happens. You inherit a world where stupidity is empowered and mediocrity enthroned, where the dullest voices ring loudest and the wisest stay silent in fear of being misunderstood, misquoted, or misbranded. In my Russia, the thinkers were sent to Siberia. In yours, they are sent into hiding. The mechanism differs, but the principle remains unchanged. And what, you ask, shall we do? Here is the question worth your contemplation. First, return to courage. The courage to say what is true, not for the sake of cruelty, but because the truth, even when uncomfortable, is the only soil from which wisdom can grow. Second, reject the tyranny of offense. A society that builds its foundations on what cannot be said is not building at all. It is burying itself beneath the rubble of its own fragility. Third, honor the thinkers, even when you disagree with them. Remember, the right to speak does not belong solely to those who echo the consensus, but most importantly to those who challenge it. Fourth, teach your children not just to feel, but to think, to question, to debate, to listen, to wrestle with contradiction rather than hide from it. And finally, remember that the world is not changed by silence, but by speech, not by retreat, but by engagement, not by pleasing all, but by standing firm for what is real. My words were not meant to offend, they were meant to awaken. If you would be a free society, then you must permit its best minds to speak without fear. Not because they are always right, no, not even the intelligent are free from error, but because when thought is stifled, the very possibility of rightness disappears. And if your tolerance no longer tolerates thinking, then it is not tolerance at all. It is submission disguised as virtue. In the end, the measure of a civilization is not how gently it coddles its most fragile egos, but how fiercely it protects its boldest minds. Think bravely, speak truthfully, and above all, endure the discomfort of hearing what you do not wish to hear, for it is there that wisdom begins. In spirit, Fyodor Dostoevsky,